Lauren from ANI 245, and this is a brief tutorial showing you how to take an image sequence out of Maya into Premiere Pro and export it as an MOV. So to begin, I want to address a question that keeps coming up in class, and that's when a student brings a Maya file from home and the sound file that's imported into it isn't working. The most common culprit of this is just changing your playback settings. So the playback settings by default are set to play every frame, and the audio will not play with play every frame activated. So go to real time, save, and the audio should work fine. If it's still not working, you can right click the timeline, go to sound, click on the little box. You'll see all the audio attributes show up in the attribute editor. Click on the little folder, find the clip, press open, and the clip will be in the timeline. Notice that it's flat green bar instead of the wave file, and that's because I have it set to use track sounds. I can just click on the original audio as my option and it'll allow scrubbing. Alright, so now that's been addressed, let's go ahead and touch on Playblast Settings. So right click in the timeline to Playblast, format image, so it's image sequence and not an AVI or an MOV. For encoding, I'm not sure if this matters or not, or if this really correlates to the final file, since I'm going to save it as a JPEG ultimately. But to be safe, I clicked on an encoder that had very little compression, like a Targa. Display size, go to Render Settings. Remember before you press Playblast that you go into your render settings. It's this little button up here next to the blue circle to open up your render settings. Under image size, go to presets and set it to HD 720, which will give you a standard 16:9 aspect ratio. Alright, so once you've done that, and you're asking the Playblast to use those render settings, go ahead and set it to an image folder that you'll find later, like to your desktop, or if you already have a project set up. Go ahead and save it as a JPEG just for ease, and I'll just call this Mary. Press save and Playblast. Now on my Mac, by default, it's going to want to open up F-Check. The reason the audio, and F-Check, at least on a Mac, will play the audio along with it. If I turn off play every frame, I can see that it's working just the way I want it to. So go back to Maya. I'm going to open up Premiere Pro. Click. Now this is really important. When you are working in Premiere Pro, the first window doesn't matter all that much. New project. Whatever you name it, so I'll just call it Mary for sake of brevity. Location, put it somewhere you can find it, like the desktop. Press OK. So this is actually the part that's important. The part that's important is making sure that you set up Premiere in such a way that everything you import is going to match the playback settings in Maya. By default, Premiere Pro is not set to 24 frames per second, it's set to 29.97, which is NTSC settings. We don't want that. So what I'm going to do is, on the PC, I would go File, Preferences, Media. This is a Mac, so I'm going to go to Premiere Pro, Preferences, Media. Again, this is under File on the PC. Now the media window is also organized a little bit differently. Instead of this indeterminate media time base, which is what we want to change, being in the middle of the screen, on the PC it's going to be at the very top of the screen. So by default this is usually set to 29.97, but I'm going to change it to 24 frames per second. So it's important that you change this option. The second option you want to change is frame count. By default it's set to start at 0. You want it to start at 1 because your animations in Maya also start at frame 1. Press OK. That's going to be half the battle right there. Now I'm going to double click on the project bin, find my image sequence folder, grab the first image, just the first image, click image sequence and import. Now if I double click this, I can see my animation up in the first preview window. I want the sequence, the timeline that I'm going to put this in, to match the aspect ratio I already have. So I'm going to grab this, drag it over to the new button, and let it go. So now I have this in a sequence that matches the sequence settings of the clip. Alright, looks good. I'm going to double click and import the audio clip and drag that into my viewport as well. Now I didn't animate the whole audio clip, so I'm going to press C on my keyboard for cut, press V for select, and just select that other half that I don't need. Press play. Alright, perfect. Now, when you first import into Premiere, oftentimes you're going to see this. This is thumbnail view. Some people really like to be able to see the thumbnail of their clip. I think it's aggravating. Right next to it is list view. So if you're wondering why it shows up like this on my screen, it's because I like list view. Because I can see the name of my file, I can see its setup, so it's set to 24 frames per second, just the way I want it to. Make sure everything's working the way I want it. Alright, so two things here. I went ahead and already offsetted the animation in Maya so that the audio hit better with the mouth. So we talked about this in class, how oftentimes when you sync up a lip sync directly with the audio, it doesn't quite hit correctly. It helps if you grab the frames on the mouth and offset it forward by 2 frames or have it start early by 2 frames. I've already done this, but if you wanted to and you didn't do it in Maya, you can just go forward like 2 or 3 frames and drag the whole animation over. Now, it still works pretty good either way, but just an idea. The other thing that students mentioned is they do not all of you like this safe guide gradient area that I've activated. I like it because it shows me exactly where my camera is going to cut off. If you don't like it, then you can go, and you have it activated when you turn on the Playblast, you can go into Effects Control, and you could just scale it out of the scene if you want to. Alright, let's talk about exporting real quick. You go File, Export, Media, and this window pops up. This is what the output looks like. This is the source. So you can kind of see how close they match. Right now they're pretty much perfect. On my computer, I have the preset HD 720. I just export. Everything just works dandy. On the PCs at the school, they don't work so great. They don't let you export HD 720 for reasons. So instead, go ahead and go to NTSC DV24p. Now, it's going to change the aspect ratio, which is really aggravating. I'm not sure to what degree. On my computer, it almost looks like a 4:3 aspect ratio, which is really frustrating. So I can see the source, I can see the output, it's really different. If it's only slightly different, you can choose whether or not that matters to you. If you want this to crop better, I'm just going to go change the video codec to animation. I could try H.264. Well, that keeps it cropped too. So I could just change it to video H.264. Usually by clicking that and match source, it'll work great. If it doesn't, I know using the school computers that I've set it to animation before, which is virtually no compression, match source, and it usually matches the source clip. And it's a little bit convoluted, I'm sorry. So again, just as a review, preset, you definitely want it to be NTSC 24p, widescreen 24p. That's what I did wrong, sorry. Okay, so you definitely want it to be NTSC DV widescreen 24p. You'll see that there's a slight difference. If that slight difference doesn't bother you, you can go ahead and export. If it does, you can change the codec to animation, match source, and it will perfectly match the source of your clip. The other thing you need to change is the output to desktop. I'll just call it Mary, save, and I'll go ahead and export. And that will be the MOV. So I should be able to click on this. There we go. So I'll